This is the How Did We Get Here podcast with your host, Nancy Jackson.
Hi, everybody. This is Nancy Jackson. I am the host of How Did We Get Here, the podcast. And I'm glad that you came back again today to hear the next edition of our series on how we actually got to this point in our culture, in our economy, in our politics, in our spiritual life, in all parts of our life. How did we get here and what has led us to this point? So I want to look back a little bit and actually not that far back. I want to talk about words, and I'm a word person, and words matter. The words we use, the choice of words that we use really make a difference. It shapes the way people understand us, and this is how we communicate with each other. And marketers and advertisers and people selling products, and even the government passing laws and regulations use words to get their point across and to influence people. And I'll give you an example. Back in, let's say from 2008 to 2012, there was a big push for cell phone use. There were a lot of people that had them before, but there was a real push to get everybody on a cell phone. And for example, the family plan was introduced to the American consumer somewhere, as I said, during that time period, to sell wireless phone usage. And the idea was that every commercial on every network and cable TV station was in high gear at that time, trying to sell, making a deal for people. They said that through this family plan, you could get a phone for every person in your family at a special discount. And the objective was to get everybody using a cell phone. And it was extremely successful. After that time, and it was called the family plan, but honestly, it wasn't about the family. It was about selling phone usage and phone service. But it was a good, catchy phrase, and it really caught with it. Well, everybody bought phones, let's face it. And it got to the point where people were so kind of hooked on their phones that they couldn't put them down. In fact, there were statistics taken that said that phone use of people had their phone and they touched their phone 100 times a day, 500 times a day, even up to 2,000 times a day. People were going to their phone to check for messages or for whatever, And you have to admit that if you go into a restaurant where there's a family, you will often find that they're all looking down at their individual cell phones during their time together out for dinner. So anyway, I just think it's kind of ironic, and it's a good example of how words can be twisted or kind of manipulated, and we're kind of manipulated by the use of those words. And I do think that it can be used to our disadvantage. I think also that it depends on, well, let's go back to what I really wanted to talk about when that was, let's talk about one other thing, and that's who is man? What is he? Is he a robot that can be programmed and influenced by advertising to buy this or buy that? Is he just, if you're a secularist, you might see man as a clump of cells, bones, blood, tissue, just kind of put together in some way without really looking at the soul or the inner part of the person. And there would be another prism, and that's the one that I am a link to, and that is the Christian view of a human being. Jesus Christ came to say that man has great value. And this turned the entire world upside down. Before that time, slavery was everywhere. And there were people that were, if you were a slave, you were regarded as nothing. You were completely disposable. You had no value whatsoever. The same was true for women and children. They had no voice and no value whatsoever. So when Jesus came and said that every man is created in the image and likeness of God, what he was saying is there's a little spark of that divine spark in every human being. So he really turned the world upside down, and it's never been the same ever since. And our Western culture is really based on that belief in the value of the human being. But there are not everybody is agreeing to that. There are forces that would like to change that and pull us into a more secular world. There was a British, and I won't even say his name, but he was quoted for saying, "We don't do God," basically saying, well, let's leave God out of everything. That's a very private thing. So we don't want to bring him into our policies or where we're trying to go. And anyway, I think one group that is the most vulnerable when it comes to this are any person that isn't perfect. They could be regarded as disposable, unnecessary, and they have a diminished value. And according to that secular ideology. And so what I want to bring in today is someone who has had an extraordinary life and has had an immense effect on many people, and is a wonderful example of, well, let me just tell you who it is. This is Bill Snyder. He's the founder of Patchwork Heart Ministry. It's a nonprofit 501c3 Catholic youth and adult ministry. He inspires, engages, and challenges young people to live their faith boldly by example through storytelling and media initiatives. He is passionate about sowing hope into broken hearts, and his story has been featured on an episode of Shalom World TV's Triumph, and several other media programs. He's the author of 4 works, including Hearts Burning Within Us, Answers to Burning Questions from Catholic College Students, and is an executive producer of Who Do You Say That I Am? It's a documentary film. Exploring the science of the Shroud of Turin through the lens of a Catholic faith, or through the lens of faith. It doesn't even necessarily mean Catholic, but just through the eyes of faith. Currently, he's producing a film about Venerable Samuel Mazzucchelli, in partnership with the Diocese of Madison, Wisconsin. He and his wife, Agnes, live with their son, Elvin Francisco, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I want to introduce to you Bill Snyder, who's going to tell you his story. It's an amazing story. So hi, Bill.
Nancy, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure and a joy to be here on the podcast with you, on How Did We Get Here podcast. And so, thank you so much for having me on today. It's great to be with you.
Good to have you. We've been
Yeah,
talking about it a while, so we're finally doing it. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'll share a little bit of my story with your audience, and feel free to jump in at any point if you need to. But I really liked how you opened up there, the short monologue, because in the eyes of the world, people with intellectual and physical disabilities and even health conditions can just be considered disposable. And so, in the eyes of the world, uh, quite often people like myself uh, get get treated as disposable. And I'll give you an example from my this is sewn into my heart, right? Like Patchwork Heart Ministry um, is as close as my beating heart. And I was born with a congenital heart defect back in 1985 called tetralogy of Fallot. All that medical jargon doesn't mean a whole lot to your listeners, and the medical condition simply meant that I needed to have immediate open heart surgery in order to save my life. Uh, And so at 3 weeks old, I was diagnosed and then had immediate open heart surgery to save my life. Since then, I've had two more surgeries, one when I was 1 and one when I was 27. In fact, I'm headed to my cardiologist here in a couple of weeks to get another checkup as I go every single year to make sure that that heart is still beating. So, and doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is keeping me going. So I've had this incredible experience, but somewhere in the first year of my life, I had a lot of medical procedures, a lot of tests, a lot of things. I ended up with a stroke. And so at a very, very young age, I don't even remember when that happened. It could have been during the first surgery, could have been after that, maybe the second one, whatever it was. I ended up having a stroke. It left the left half of my body impaired. So, it's hard to see on a Zoom call, but this hand works very efficiently, not so much. So, the left half of my body, in other words, it required me have a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy. Occupational therapy, how do you, carry a lunch tray? How do you tie your shoes? How do you go down a flight of stairs? I remember that when I was younger and the fourth grade teacher came and asked me, how do you go downstairs, or why are you going downstairs not every other foot and just going down, putting the second foot on the next step before you go down every other foot. And that was home for having to have homework to learn how to go downstairs when I was a young man. So there are or a boy. So there were so many different things that I had to overcome growing up. And and begin to understand who I was, right? Like, I had a lot of different people impacting me. It was doctors from the medical profession. There was a speech therapist, there were teachers, there were guys, there were a lot of people working to give me a life that that I could function in, right? I mean, now I'm able to drive a car and I'm able to pick up my 3-year-old son. I'm able to, go and enjoy life. But a lot of that was because my parents and these doctors and these teachers and these occupational therapists put a lot of effort into helping me get to a point where I can, function and be what I think is a normal human being. But there are times out there, as you mentioned, in the world where people look at me or they look at the certain situation and they say, hey, no, he can't do that, or no, he shouldn't be doing that, or maybe he needs help here, or whatever. And we become, cast out. Now, the good news is when the world does that, like, we think about the scripture and how often Jesus turned and healed lepers, right? He gave them worth. Jesus gave those who were ill, those who were, afflicted with disease worth. And he did that for me. Like, I don't need to look beyond myself, beyond my God for self-worth. You know, I often say this when I speak to young people. When I look down at my shoelaces, I see a struggle that took days to overcome. There was one person that helped me tie my shoes. It was an occupational therapist who helped me do it. But then it was Jesus Christ who gave me the worth and said, hey, you need to know how to tie your shoes. I am going to help you and give you the strength and the determination in your heart to do it. And so when you look at all the different facets of the person that I am, I see so many amazing people who have helped my journey. I s- but I also see God at this gives me my worth, right? And then empowers me to go out and speak the truth and and help other people. That's where my ministry comes from. It's to simply help people recognize that they're broken. You know, there's so many people walking around on this earth, as you alluded to earlier, just sucked in by their phones, right? They're just scrolling down their phones with no meaning in life. They maybe they've had an experience where the world has cast them out and said your views don't fit in with the views of the world. And so now you're shunned and they have no idea what to do. Well, there's one person that wants to give you worth. There's one person that wants to heal your heart. His name is Jesus Christ. He can do it. All I try to do is be a divine physician assistant and help people recognize that he is the one in their hearts that can come in and patch their heart back together. I've got patches keeping my heart going right now, and so therefore, I need to remember that I can help others recognize where they have a broken heart or they have some need that they need the Lord to fix, and that He is patch it back together.
That's great. That's a beautiful story.
Well, thank you.
Well, I I know another family that has grown children with many, many health problems that they kind of inherited. And I know their mother, and she spends all of her time filling out forms trying to get health care for them. And that is a real challenge. It's almost like a full-time job doing it because, and I'm not sure, I don't know. Obviously, it just is more difficult for people in that situation if they don't have an advocate uh, helping them.
Mm.
I just don't think it's possible. So there must be a lot of people that kind of slip through the cracks that never get the help they need. So I don't know. I guess we should be grateful for the help that we do get, but I kind of wonder if there isn't a better way, a better system that would be more supportive of people that are so vulnerable.
Oh, sure. The healthcare system in this country really is broken. Talking about broken things, we really need a healthcare system that is functional and is able to help. And as you kind of mentioned, you know another family who for whatever reason gets thrust into this. It's not by choice. There's no there was no choice on my part to give me a heart condition, right? It certainly wasn't my choice.
Hmm.
It's God's choice. That's
Right,
God's choice to do that.
right.
Um, and and the world, however, takes advantage of that situation, as you mentioned in the monologue as you opened up, right? The world will just take advantage of that. They'll say, "Hey, well, this person's at a disadvantage, so now we're going to um, step in and take advantage of you financially or whatever." And so, for me, I have seen, and unfortunately, look, hey, listen, I have had the best health care that I could possibly have. I am so grateful to my doctors, to my parents for fighting for me when I was younger to make sure that I had the best health care. My third surgery was performed at Mayo Clinic. Dr. Uh, Joseph Durrani, one of the world's leading heart surgeons for pulmonary care, put my valve in. Like these,
Wow.
I've been incredibly blessed with the top healthcare
Mhm.
um, in the country, but it doesn't mean it's not expensive and not difficult to
Sure.
navigate.
Yes.
Um, you know, and and when you look back at some of the decisions that were made recently with Obamacare and with the Affordable Care Act, these things are just words that that people use like affordable care to mess with and take advantage of people who are in these situations. And so you really have to pay attention. You really have to look deeply. And you got to be able to, then go forward and vote,
Right, that's
you
right.
know,
Mhm.
in a way that is actually providing meaningful assistance to those who are in a situation like this, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
yeah, all social engineering starts with verbal engineering.
mm,
And an example is with this euthanasia issue. Um, and so government officials will use, and I guess people in the medical field too, avoid using the word suicide. Um, and what they'll use instead is speeding up the dying process. And, that's just kind of a cover for what they're really doing. I mean, I don't want to get into end of life issues. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to cause trouble. But I do think that there are words that are chosen to protect doctors who might be negligent from any kind of uh, liability when it comes to some of these issues. And I think that the statistics are sheltered. They're not really telling us what's going on. That's the part that really bothers me, is that a lot of this information is being hidden from the public. And
mm.
that's what I object to. I think that people need to know what's really going on. It's kind of a revolution of language. And actually, if you think about it, that is a key principle of Marxism, to kind of change the words around so that it doesn't sound. I know in World War II, anybody who was mentally retarded was rounded up and um, taken to, and they called them like recovery centers or special centers for them. But really what they were eliminated. They were killed. And yet they didn't really want to put that name on it. So, and the same was done with anybody with any kind of a flaw, like diabetes, or, I mean, during the reign of Nazism, horrible things were done,
Right.
where they rounded up everybody that was imperfect and they just did away with them.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I just hate to think that we're going in that direction. And I think that the one thing that we mustn't let go of it, and that is this, it's the foundation of our Western civilization, and it is the value of the human person. And it's based on our Christian beliefs that we are a gift from God, and that we all deserve respect, and that we are all valued as human beings. So
100%.
I don't know do you have anything you want to say in closing? Because I know we're going to run out of time here.
Yeah, Nancy. So just in closing, I encourage everybody to, really examine what's in their hearts, um, and take a look deep in their souls and find out what's broken. And then it's because it's how you respond to your brokenness. Do you allow the world to just, you know, dictate who you are, or do you allow Jesus Christ to say, "You are one of mine"? And um, give me, because if you give Jesus the brokenness, if you give Jesus the sin, he transforms your life in a very powerful and meaningful way. So I encourage people to do that. Um, if you want to learn a little bit more about what I do in my ministry and all of that, I encourage you to head over to my website. It's very simply patchworkheart.org. That's all you have to do is head over patchworkheart.org. You'll be able to find all about what we do. Our speaking engagements are uh, our ministry, our videos, our podcasts, all that good stuff is over at patchworkheart.org. Look forward to connecting with many of you as you watch this. And as I always say, Nancy, closing off my podcast, keep beating to your Catholic heart.
Sounds beautiful. Thank you so much, Bill. I really am so happy that you could do this finally. And I hope lots of people hear your message and follow up. The one thing I would like to also say is that I encourage people to think for themselves and to speak up when they, you need to speak the truth and don't be intimidated by other people. Go ahead and have the courage, pray for courage, and God will give it to you. Anyway, I hope that you all will come back again for our next session. And again, thanks for joining today. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the How Did We Get Here podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends and family. For more information and to connect with Nancy, email howdidwegethere1884@gmail.com.